Hey, everybody, welcome back to Living on the Verge. Today, we're talking about idiosyncrasies, which is a very sophisticated word for the weird little things we do that make perfect sense to us and may or may not drive everybody around us crazy. I think today is going to be a really fun show, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. So let's get into it. Technically, an idiosyncrasy is a distinctive feature or characteristic of a person, but that sounds so clinical. I think most of us know it as that little habit, the sound, a saying, or maybe a way of doing something that makes somebody unmistakably themselves. So this whole concept started because I just love to people watch. It's one of my favorite pastimes, whether I am in a small venue, whether I am at a big place like Disneyland. It's just one of those things I enjoy doing. I like to people watch. I like studying the human condition. And I started noticing the little idiosyncrasies people have. Like the girl who constantly tosses her hair, or that dude at the butcher counter who starts every conversation with a single hand clap. What can I get ya? And I thought, if I asked my husband to name one of mine, what would he say? Now, to be clear, I did not ask him. I just guessed what he would say. And it took me about 1.2 seconds. He would say, well, you slam cupboards and drawers. Now, I don't think that I walk around deliberately slamming things. I mean, they're my cupboards and drawers, so there's a vested interest in making sure that I take care of them, right? But sometimes I'm just moving through my kitchen or just through life, doing what I'm doing, and I don't even notice. I'm in the moment. Then there are those times that I am aware of it, and it generally will be when my husband is tired. And when I notice that he's extremely exhausted, I become a little bit more aware and I try to close things a little more gently. So without asking him, yeah, I'm pretty sure that would be his answer. And once I started thinking about it, I realized idiosyncrasies are so much easier to identify in other people than they are in ourselves. I mean, I sat there and I was like, what are my idiosyncrasies? Now, that's not to say that I'm perfect. Far from it. We all are far from perfect. But it's a little bit harder to look inside of yourself. Now, everybody knows that friend who snorts when she laughs, or the person who clicks the pen on and off over and over and over again, or that one person who shakes their leg or their foot or their knee so aggressively that the entire table is moving. And does anybody else remember that uncle? You know, the one that every family seemed to have. He was always clearing his throat, and that's how it would start. But then it kept going until he gagged. And you could kind of hear it starting from across the room and think, oh no, please don't do it. Please, please, please don't do it. And then he did it. Every time. Ew. Sometimes when somebody is repeating an annoying sound or motion, my instinct is to start counting the offenses in my head. Like the pen clicker. Ben does this sometimes when he's bored. And there I go. Click 1. Click 2, click 3. I don't know why, but somehow keeping count, I don't know, it just gives me the sense that maybe this is almost over. Now, it may not actually be almost over, but for some reason, the counting makes me feel better. And the funny thing is that these sounds and habits, they also tend to become part of how we recognize people. Sometimes you know exactly who entered the room without even looking up. You hear a laugh. You hear a set of keys. You hear somebody stirring their coffee. You hear a particular way a person walks through the house. And you know what? You know exactly who it is. It's the sound that announces us before we enter the room, right? So when I was growing up, my dad had the biggest keychain. It was unimaginably humongous. I don't know how many keys were actually on it or why he even needed so many damn keys. But it sounded like he had keys to every building in the state. You could always hear him coming. And it wasn't just us. You could ask anyone who knows my dad. Everyone knew him for those keys. And in later years, my mom, she had her own sound too. Okay. She always wore acrylic nails ever since I was really young, and always the same dark blood red color. And she had beautiful nails. But at some point, and I don't know when it happened, it just came on out of nowhere. She started this thing where she would rub them together, you know, like this. Only hers were really, really loud. And simultaneously, she would whistle. And you guys, at the time, it drove me nuts. I remember picking her up for lunch one day and this habit started. And I was just like, what in the world is going on? And you guys, I don't mean I found this mildly irritating. It got all the way under my skin. I was super annoyed. And all the way through lunch, rub, rub, rub. While we watched a show, rub, 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 whistle, whistle, whistle. But she doesn't wear acrylic nails anymore. And she doesn't make music with her hands anymore. And now, I kind of wish she still did. It's strange how something can irritate you while it's happening and then become one of the things you miss. When I tell my husband, can you stop? He always says, you're going to miss that about me one of these days. One of my sons was a whistler. Growing up all over the house, whistle, whistle, whistle. And one is still a hummer to this day. You don't necessarily notice those sounds when you hear them all the time. They end up just kind of becoming part of the house, right? But once they're gone, or you don't hear them as often, you realize how much they belong to that person. Ben, he clinks his spoon against the cup when he stirs his coffee. A lot of people do this. And that one doesn't really bother me. It has kind of just become part of the soundtrack around here. And thankfully, stirring your coffee is not an endless task, so it doesn't last very long. And then there are certain utensil sounds that are not quite as charming. My dear husband, well, he's also notorious for making that god-awful scraping noise with his fork and knife against the plate. And I'll never forget, even my youngest points it out to his dad when he comes home to this day, because he can't stand it either. And at least I know it's not just me. A little bit of vindication. But to be fair, yeah, that one probably belongs in the pet peeve episode. And so today, we're going to stick with the habits themselves, or we're at least going to try to. And so, apparently, I'm a loud person. The cupboard slamming thing probably shouldn't surprise me because I've always been a loud typer. Do you know that person? You know, when I worked in an office, I was the loudest typer there. It was actually kind of an office joke. I actually went through keyboards faster than my coworkers. And once I was told at an office luncheon that it was quieter in the office when I called in sick or went on vacation. It's true. I'm not going to deny it. And you know what? I still type loudly now. And I just do. I don't gently caress the keyboard. I type with purpose. And I've noticed recently that when I'm thinking, I also tap on the keyboard. Not typing words, just tapping while I think. Oh, geez, when did that start? And so far, I only do that when I'm alone. So, fingers crossed. Yeah. And you know what else? I used to always crack my knuckles all the time. That's another common one, right? I don't do it nearly as much anymore, but for years, it was one of those things I barely noticed until someone else reacted to it. And as time went on, I realized that if you don't hear it a lot, knuckle cracking can be one of those sounds that really freaks you out, sends this tingle up your spine. That seems to be one of those defining features of an idiosyncrasy. The person doing it, well, you guys, they often have no idea it's happening, while the person nearby is hearing every single occurrence and possibly counting them. Then here's another one, the television. Apparently, that too is a me problem. Ben says, I listen to the television too loudly. And you know what? He's right. I like to watch television with volume. Sue me. If I'm watching a show, I want to hear the show. And especially if I'm watching the show with those people who like to talk and comment and ask questions, I don't want to spend the entire episode asking, what did they say? Wait, hold on. I didn't hear that. And rewinding it. So yeah, the television is loud. I accept that one. Guilty as charged. And not sorry. But the commercials suddenly becoming louder than the show, well, now that can send me running across the house looking for the remote. Has this happened to you? You're in the kitchen, you left the remote in the living room, you're watching a show, it goes to commercial, it scares the living bejesus out of you. You jump 15 feet in the air and run across the room to get the remote control to try to lower it. And by the time you get there, the show's back on, so you have to turn the volume back up. Yeah. I don't know. The commercials suddenly becoming louder, that's a problem. But it's also absolutely a pet peeve, not really an idiosyncrasy. So again, we'll come back to that another time. And have you ever thought this? Because I do. My habits have logic. Well, at least to me. Some idiosyncrasies, they can look pretty excessive from the outside, right? But feel completely rational to the person who's doing them. And I'm going to give you an example. My shoes. I love shoes. I have a lot of shoes. Probably somewhere around, 75 pair, more or less, give or take. Everything from my favorite Jordans to my pink sandals to my hiking boots to my water shoes. And they are all organized. Each pair of shoes lives in a clear box. The box is perfectly, neatly labeled. And the shoes are sorted by type. It's a lot. I know. It's a lot. But you guys, it works. I mean, if I want the pink sandals, I know where the pink sandals are. And if I need water shoes, I'm not searching through some dark pile at the bottom of the closet. There's a system, and it works for me. But someone else might look at my closet and think, okay, obsessed with organization of shoes. And you know what? It's okay. And then there are utensils. Okay, this one's another one, but I cannot eat with plastic utensils at home. So, you decide to take the night off and you order in, and your husband shows up with all the food and all the bags, and everything gets emptied out into the island, and the paper plates are thrown out, and everybody thinks, okay, this is going to be a super easy night, no cleanup. I cannot eat with plastic utensils at home. Now, if that sounds strange, I get it. Now, if I'm at a picnic or a party or a fast food place or somewhere where plastic makes sense, okay, fine. But in my own house, no. Not with the drawer full of actual silverware. Someone asked me one time, would you rather wash a fork if all of your utensils were dirty and you brought home food? Would you rather wash a fork than use a clean plastic one? And I didn't even hesitate. My answer was absolutely. I don't know why, but it just feels wrong at home. And here's another one. Do you have a side of the bed? I think most people would answer yes to this, but some people don't really care. Those are the people that I envy, those people that can fall asleep and sleep well anywhere. Oh gosh, if only. But me, I always sleep on the right side. Now, that's the right side when you're lying down in the bed. Why? Well, it's because I'm a stomach sleeper, and I like to kick my left leg out from under the covers. Not my right leg, my left leg. How do I know this? Well, because on vacations, I've accidentally chosen the wrong side from time to time. And you know what? I find I really do have a harder time sleeping. I guess, as it turns out, all ventilation is not created equal. The right side of the bed, at least for me, allows for proper left leg ventilation. And so that is my side. And when we talk about idiosyncrasies, we have the sounds and the noises, but we also have the things that our family can predict. Some idiosyncrasies, they're not physical habits. Sometimes they're the things that we always say. For example, if you ask each of my children, independent of one another, what's one thing you can always count on your mom saying when you visit? My kids would say, well, we could always bank on her saying, be careful whenever they leave. These are grown men. They have jobs, homes, families, and children of their own. And still, be careful? They could probably mouth the words along with me. I've been saying it for years. And I know saying it doesn't actually create a protective bubble around their cars. I wish it could. I know they were not planning to drive recklessly until, oh, thank goodness, mom reminded them to be careful. But I'm their mom. It just comes out automatically. It's almost less of an instruction and more of a general blessing at this point. You know, be careful means I love you. Come back safely. Text me when you get there. Or simply remember that somebody is always thinking about you. And there are other things we say, right? Like catchphrase stages. You know how something becomes mainstream, like the kids' 6-7 phase last year. and everybody uses it way too much and, well, way past its expiration date. Fair enough. I'm no exception. I had a very long Bye Felicia stage. I could not let it go. My kids would roll their eyes. My husband would just grunt. And after a while, I would say it kind of because I knew it was so yesterday that in and of itself just cracked me up. And Ben, he still says, "Listen, Linda," from time to time. Remember that one? I always found that one adorable, and it makes me laugh when Ben says it even to this day. But for me, anyways was probably my longest running saying. And just for clarity, I realize that it is grammatically incorrect. That was part of the fun for me. I would never say anyway. I would always say anyways. Who did that? Oh, yeah, it was me. And it was my longest running saying. It lasted decades and decades. And I said it so much, I even had a t-shirt. You guys, it's just funny. Sometimes a repeated phrase becomes part of the private language of a family. You know what the person is going to say before they say it, but you still enjoy hearing it. You know, like I mentioned in a recent episode, my family used to and now forever shall call Polska kielbasa Sheboygan. We just do, and we all know what we're talking about. And that's just the way it goes. It's familiar and it belongs to our family. And as I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, I keep asking myself, why can we see everybody else's quirks? It's so interesting how quickly we can identify other people's habits, and yet how difficult it is to name our own. I could probably make a list of Ben's in about 5 minutes, and I could probably also make a list of the things my children did when they were growing up. Yep, I remember Mom's nails and whistle. I remember Dad's giant keychain. I remember the whistler and the hummer in the family. But when I tried to list my own, I struggled. Now, if you're thinking, oh, sure she did because she's so perfect, that's not at all where I'm going with this. It's just that I really had to think about it. And when I started asking myself why, I realized that maybe it's because our own habits, well, to us, they happen inside of our own normal. For me, I don't experience my shoe boxes as peculiar. I experience them as knowing exactly where my shoes are. And I don't see washing a fork as unusual. I just want a real fork. And I don't think the television is excessively loud. I experience it as being able to hear what everybody is saying and kind of a cinematic experience in my own home. I don't experience "be careful, mijo" as a catchphrase. I'm simply being their mom. Other people see it differently. To them, we're the cupboard slammer, the loud typer, the person with the labeled shoe boxes, or the person that stirs their coffee really noisily, or that one girl that you heard about. You know the one I'm talking about, the one who would rather wash a metal fork than to use a plastic fork, even if she's eating brought-in food from takeout. Okay, that's me. So now I want to talk about what happens when a quirk becomes something more. Not everything we repeatedly do is a harmless little idiosyncrasy, right? Think about this for a while. For me, I have a very difficult time leaving things unfinished. And sometimes I go overboard. That's way bigger than tapping on the keyboard or organizing shoes. It can mean that sometimes I keep working long after I intended to stop. And I think about it and say, gosh, Virginia, why are you doing this? Well, it's because my brain wants the loop closed, right? I want the task completed. I want the answer found, the problem resolved, or the project wrapped up in a neat little package. And don't get me wrong, this tendency can be very useful. It's part of why I've stuck with this podcast. It's part of why I've had success raising my children and in multiple businesses. It's how I learned to dig in and get down to the nitty-gritty and edit this podcast and finish complicated projects and create the systems that I have in my life today. But it can also mean that one unfinished thing gets far more time and energy than it deserves. This happens to me from time to time. And so there's probably a difference between a harmless quirk and a pattern that you might need to keep an eye on. Sometimes a giant keychain is just a giant keychain. Sometimes the right side of the bed is simply the right side of the bed, and also the correct side of the bed for me. Ha ha ha. And sometimes I really do need to close the cupboard a little more gently. And so when I think about the things that we remember, what stays with me the most is how these small details become attached to people. My dad's keys. My mom's nails and whistle. Ben's spoon clinking inside his coffee cup. My whistling and humming boys. My children already knowing that I'm going to say, be careful. And those aren't the big facts of anybody's life, but they make the memories vivid. You don't just remember the person, you can hear them. Maybe that's why some of the things that once irritated us have a tendency to become endearing with time. Although let's be really clear. I'm not promising that the throat clearing uncle will eventually soften and become a treasured memory. No, some things just remain gross. But now I want to know yours. What's the thing that everybody says you do? Do you have a particular mug that you use every single day and you have to have it for your coffee, or your coffee just doesn't taste the same? Do you have a side of the bed? Or maybe a strange food rule, like those people who don't like their food to touch? Or a sound, a habit, or a phrase that your family could always predict that you're going to say? And what did somebody you love do that once irritated you, but now you kind of miss? Okay, folks, it's your turn. Send me your idiosyncrasies. As for me, I'm going to try to do a little better closing cupboards gently. And I'll consider lowering the television, but probably not. And as for the shoes, they are staying exactly where they are. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me to compare the weird little things we all do. And until next time, I'll be right here living on the verge.